Welcome and thank you to our Q2 webinar, Stuck in the Messy Middle of AI. And if you believed everything you read on LinkedIn, you would think you have totally missed the boat and everyone's way ahead of you in AI. And I can tell you from working with a lot of companies, that is not the case. What I do see is across marketing teams, marketers are testing things to see where they can make a difference in marketing, whether it's improving efficiency, automating workflows, supporting campaign execution. But I think most people, most organizations are really trying to work through what that looks like in practice. And so today, that's what this webinar is all about. I've brought in two marketing leaders to talk to us who are currently in what we're affectionately call the messy middle of AI. They're going to talk about how they're thinking about AI in their org, experiments they've tried, some successful, maybe some not so successful, and the impact that's having on their marketing mix. So a couple quick things before we start. We will leave time at the end for Q&A. There is on the right-hand side of your screen a box for Q&A. Please put your questions in there. And yes, we will send the recording. I can't believe we have to say this every webinar, but yes, you will get the recording. Check your inbox tomorrow and feel free to share this with family and friends. So let me introduce today's guests. I have Harrup Mieuli, who is the CMO at Gigamon, and I have Colleen Goldblatt, who is the Senior Director of Global Marketing Programs at Qlik. And I am Macchi, EVP of Innovation and one of the co-founders of Inverta. And so let's dive in. I want to start with the big picture. Lots of teams are experimenting with the AI. And what I see is there's a difference between experimenting with it and it's really how it's really becoming a priority inside your organization. And so what I wanted to ask first was, what's the forcing function that made you take AI seriously in your organization? There's not just a tool, that's something that really mattered at the organization level. And so, Lisa, I'm going to start with you. You created a framework that you shared with your board that mapped out your AI maturity model. So can you tell us a little bit about it? Like, how are you thinking about where you are today and where do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So as an executive staff, we all had to kind of dig in and think about how we're approaching AI, how we're pushing the team to, because the board obviously is very interested in AI and what are you doing, and it's creating efficiency and saving money and so on. So I think we really looked at, okay, where are we from a maturity level? And we created this kind of matrix. And so it goes everywhere from kind of experiential to transformational. That's a big word. So from where we are as a company, we're really in the defining mode, right? So we've integrated into all the organizations, but it's also testing. So we have governance from a security perspective and from a internal program perspective, but then each team is individually kind of figuring out how and where we find efficiencies. And I think for the marketing team specifically, it's efficiencies in how do we add in skill sets that we don't have already, but then also how do we make the marketing teams more efficient? So whether it's from content creation, personalization on the BDR team, or just getting things out the door from a campaign perspective faster. Now, is it perfect at this point in time? No, because we're all testing, and whoever says they're an AI expert is lying. But we're all learning, but it's absolutely a specific initiative and one of our company's big rocks for the year.
I'm going to just follow up with you quickly for a minute, Lisa, on that. How did you get your team to go from sort of these pilots to where you are at the defining mode? Like, did you do training to start? Like, how did that actually come to life?
Yeah, so last year we created what we called an AI tiger team within the marketing department. So all of us were kind of immature from an AI perspective. So we really said, okay, let's create a tiger team. Let's understand what are some of the problems we're facing and how do we attack this kind of one problem at a time? Because if you try and do everything, then you can't be successful at anything. And so we did really define some use cases. We brought in an AI expert that did training for the whole entire marketing organization. And I think that's where we got from uncomfortable with AI to really comfortable with AI to now we want to actually implement AI. But I think it takes a really clear, defined program and one step at a time, and what can we check off and see actually efficiencies. And so let's start with content. And so we actually saw the team got more confidence and almost trusted AI a little bit more. But again, it's one step at a time.
Interesting. Colleen, I want to bring you in here. I know Qlik, you said, created a cross-functional AI council. What can you tell us, like, what does it tell you about how they're thinking about AI, either how your approach is, how you're governing it, compared to like other technology that you brought in? Why a council?
Yeah, so the council really was put in place around a lot of what was happening. Lisa, like your team that created that Tiger team, we actually started with a whole lot of experimentation. It was one of those moments where everyone was doing something and playing around with AI, whether that be content generation, whether that be some coding and workflows, working on our own tools on how we're taking AI to our customers, but starting to use our own tools. And I think a couple of things that were really interesting and different to us, and the reason we had to move to that council was a couplefold. One is, I'm old enough, I think a lot of us might be old enough to remember back when the marketing tech landscape infographic that we've all seen, back when it had 150 logos on it, and now it's like 15,000 or more. So in marketing, we're no stranger to new categories. I think what was interesting here are a couple of things. One is AI was being utilized across the organization. So it wasn't just a marketing tool. It wasn't just a CS tool. It wasn't just sales. It was being used in every pocket of the organization. And the integration and getting us out of silos was incredibly important in that moment. There's an opportunity for us to all be using other people's data. All of a sudden I have access to the CS team's data, or finance has access to everything, which is a whole different conversation. But how do you start to govern that? How do you open that up in ways that are fit for purpose, that people are getting what they need, they have access to the data and the tooling that they need, without sort of, giving anybody too much, overwhelming the system, having us go bankrupt, spending more money on AI and data passing and all of those things than we need to be. Just all of those things we're really coming together. So across the organization, the other piece of that is there was a huge skill set component that comes in to play here. And across the organization, we needed that council and that training and that governance to make sure our teams that were utilizing AI had the skill sets to do it. They had the discernment to understand, am what I'm seeing is right, or is it a hallucination? Because if we couldn't do that, then we were scaling risk in our business. We were not scaling our business.
Interesting. So if I stay at the leadership level, and I'll open this up to both of you. When the board says you want to do more with AI, like I hear that from a lot of, do more with AI, what do they mean? And what don't they understand about how to do it well? Either one of you.
So I can start. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Go ahead, Lisa. You start.
So I think.
Go ahead, Lisa. We're going to give you the floor.
There we go.
There we go. We're both so excited. So I think with the board, they see cost, efficiency, and people, right? And so can we save costs with, eliminating jobs? And so I think part of it is really understanding, okay, Colleen, to your point, what's the governance? So how do we get the organization to, instead of using, for example, ChatGPT individually, we implemented Glean company-wide, so everyone's using the same tool. So we all understand, kind of the security team understands where we are and what we're doing. I also think, because we shared that slide we shared before at the board meeting as to where we actually are and what is the belief and what is reality. And so it takes educating the board of, one, you have to prove efficiency. And so each board meeting, we're presenting the board of where we're implementing AI, where it's working, and honestly, where it maybe, like you said before, Kathy, didn't work. And so it's not about people or budget at this point in time. It's really about driving efficiency, and we're helping teams, do skills or jobs that may take less time so they can focus on more strategic work. And it's really helping the board understand where you're implementing, what you can do, and driving the efficiency message, because I think Colleen said it too, it hallucinates. So there has to be that human interaction, that human proof point. So where does it drive efficiency? And then where does that human come in and really drive that strategy and making sure that there's proof in what we're doing?
That's great. Colleen, you obviously.
Yeah. So I think there's a gap in understanding. I think it's easy to put the can't you just on the slide, right? The models are lovely. The maturity curves are nice and clean and tight and tidy. But when you get down into what it actually takes to make this work happen, I think understanding your systems and how healthy your systems are is so incredibly important to getting AI right. And systems can
Tell me what you mean by that. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think for me, it's everything from your data. So how clean is your data? It is how structured is your all of your inputs, your brand tone, your brand guidelines might all be there, but how easily can you reference product documentation? How easily can you reference all of that source material, that unstructured data that would need to go into the models to feed what you're working on? And then I think it's also a process piece. How clean are your processes? Or are we doing everything ad hoc? Because let's be honest, sometimes there's a process when you have to follow something, and a lot of things get done ad hoc and in meetings and by committee. And in order to move to AI from a content generation or from a workflow automation standpoint, all of those things have to be pretty clean. And I think that there is an assumption that they are. And I think that there is a misunderstanding of the volume and the workload that it takes to clean that up to get to a point where you can start to automate.
Yeah, and Kathy, I would just add one more thing to that. I think brand protection and trust from your customers is really important. And so when you're putting out pieces of content, or you need to make sure that you're protecting your brand as well as your tone of voice, and that your customers can believe and not instantly say, oh, AI produced that. So that's where I think there's a high level brand protection that is really important to this AI journey that we're all on.
Yeah, and Lisa, we actually had a great conversation among the team last week that if your inputs are clean, if your tone guidelines, if your brand guidelines, if your product info, if all of that is clean, that you are putting into AI to generate content, I actually think that there can be an improvement in in the consistency of your content generation. But it's the input output thing. So I think that there's positivity and benefit to consistency, but you got to get it right to start, and you've got to know the people, to the point earlier on who's reviewing it to make sure that the systems aren't making things up.
Yeah, and I think training on inputs and all of that is really important. It's not and I think that's why we did several trainings throughout the year, and we're still doing them this year. It's not a one and done, okay, you know how to do this, go on with everybody. It's really important to revisit what we're trying to accomplish, what's important, what should we be looking for, and to get the team excited and engaged, but also very meticulous about what we're putting into the system.
So if I'm going to summarize, and then I want to bring up one other point. Getting your data obviously makes sense, like garbage in, garbage out. I think getting training for everyone, and I like the ongoing, Lisa. Like, I think that's really important. It's not a one and done, especially the models change all the time. What you needed for prompting a year ago is not what you need now.
Right.
Colleen, you brought up another point about what I call knowledge blocks. Like, how do you get those core knowledge pieces, which I think right now are in people's heads or spread around the company? So they're in a shape also that AI makes sense out of them. I'm going to get into that a little later as we talk around some content. And the last piece, which I think is really important, is that whole workflow. Like things just sort of happen, but if you're going to put AI, where are those handoffs? Who does what? And I think the workflows, I would say, is not always a marketer's person's strength, and really building in that discipline, I think, is important. That's what I sort of took away. The other thing I just want to bring up, because it's come up before, is like a lot of CMOs, Lisa, have come and said, we've done all this stuff, but I'm not seeing any impact. And part of it is, and I'd like both of your take on this, I think everyone's working 40 hours, if not 50 hours a week. How have you made time for your teams? Like, yeah, you want to get more efficient, but I'm already like, I have to keep doing all this stuff. I have to get campaigns out there. I have to write the blogs. How have you made time for your teams? Like to do that?
So like I said at the opening, it's one of the big rocks. So AI optimization, AI integration, it's one of our objectives. So what we also try to do is, it's hard to say no to anything when we have so much to do. So if we said, okay, here are our 4 big rocks for the year, everything that you do has to be tied to that. And AI optimization and efficiency is one of those big rocks. And like I said earlier, we implement training. So we help make time. So as a team, we're doing AI training. So we're scheduling time. And I think people find it interesting. So you will also find pockets of the organization of people that have created really cool agents, for example, that we need to take time to share. So I think it's a matter of, one, making it objective so they know what they're doing is tied to what their goals are for the year, and 2, carving out time for people to actually spend time doing it and make it okay.
I think that's you setting the tone from the top. I think if leadership doesn't have an overall vision what they want, that's where I think it sort of just gets all wobbly.
Yeah. And it's
Colleen?
career advancement as well.
Yeah.
I would echo what Lisa said and really put the exposure and training into 2 buckets. There's the formal training, which, it's not fun to go to training on a new legal process, but everybody's kind of interested in AI and wants to learn and wants to advance and incorporate that into their jobs. So I think that is a piece, but we have incorporated AI training and learning into training and learning formats that already existed for us. So we have learning series, we have other things that are in place, and we have tweaked the content that goes out to our marketing teams to make sure we're focused on AI. And then I think there's the informal learning that we're allowing the experimentation. We are encouraging people to try new things, because when they take that learning or what they're hearing, what they're reading on LinkedIn or their friends are telling them about, and they start to experiment, we're actually rewarding the experimentation by, Lisa, to your point, somebody built a great agent. Let's go show it off. Let's get people to then brainstorm what else they can do. And I think that piece of the learning is as important, if not more so, than some of the more formal trainings.
Exactly.
All right, let's make this practical. Let's talk about AI and really what's working. Like, what is one use case that has delivered value that you would recommend to a friend? And Colleen, I'm going to pull you in on this one because I want you to come and tell us, you use ChatGPT to build an event audience acquisition strategy. Sort of take us inside that. How did you approach it? What did the process look like? What would you do differently now if you were doing it?
Yeah. So we actually, back to the conversation around thinking about AI as a new kind of tool, a new category of tool. I really worked with the team and used ChatGPT as my thought partner in building this strategy. Really understanding that I needed to make sure foundationally that we were building the right foundation. We weren't asking Chat to do too much at once because that's when it tends to hallucinate and go off the rails. So understanding the start slow, take the steps. The first step for me was, again, back to building the right foundation. So I needed an anchor. I needed to make sure that the project understood the context of what I was working on. So I uploaded all of our event details, our messaging frameworks, our persona targets, our reg goals, last year's data, what we did last year, what worked, what didn't, all the emails with all of the metrics attached to them. I uploaded everything because I wanted it to have my context. And then I started digging in. I'm like, all right, let's talk about how do we start to build this strategy over the next 6 months? What does my comm plan look like? And we started off in a conversation around what each of my audiences was going to need in order to be convinced to register, because we've all planned events. We know how this goes. 6 months out, not everything is set. And there are going to be a lot of people who won't register until the full agenda's set. They can see all the breakouts, those kinds of things. So we built the timeline on what would be available. Then we looked at each milestone, and then we looked at who my audiences were. So those audiences were, I've got my advocates and my always attends. I can go out, I can get them to register on day one. They love the early bird pricing, hook, line, and sinker, in, out, done, right? But the people who maybe haven't been to the event before are going to need more info. And so we really paced through those campaign phases based on what was available, who my target audiences were, and then moved into, against those phases, what did my messaging calendar look like? What was my weekly comm messaging calendar? What channels should I be considering through that time? And then as we started to build that out, what was the message what was the permutation of our message in each of those weeks? And what that then allowed me to do, because then I switched to, okay, chat, now I need you to help me build the smart sheet to track all of this, is it built the format for the smart sheet that I then rolled into the work stream, where I brought every single channel in and I said, here's the schedule, here's the audiences, here's the messaging, here's what we're going live with. Let's start to plan. And everybody was able to get most of the work in the can way ahead of actually trying to deploy things. It was awesome to speed the work up of the team and make us more efficient. Doing that work took me about a day. Building that strategy in previous years would have been ad hoc over the 6 months as we went, trying to figure out how, what's available now and who cares about this and what are we looking at? So it was really incredible for the efficiency of the team that's trying to plan this event, and every channel that was working on it was sort of doing that in addition to their other demand and communication roles. Yeah. And so it helped us fit into that process better.
You could probably start a business now helping people plan for events. Yeah. We'll keep you at Qlik right now. We'll keep you there.
Right. I think my Qlik team would like that. Yes.
Yeah. All right, Lisa, on your side, your content team built out agents to repurpose assets. Like, what made that work? And as we talked earlier, where do you still have people in the process? Or as they say now, human in the loop, which always sounds so funny to me. Where do you still have people that are checking things?
Yeah, exactly. So I think one thing that is clear is, breaking down silos. And so making the product marketing team, the campaign team, the content team, the webinar team, not that they were silos, but they all have a lot to do. And we have, and the content team is really leading the way of creating workflows. So the speed to content and the speed to campaign execution has just been extremely faster, right? But where the human comes in is that somebody needs to read the content. So you can't say, here's a white paper, for example, create a blog, create this, and not do the double checking. And so I think the human interaction comes in multiple stages, right? So you create a messaging doc. ChatGPT or Glean can create that. You got to double check it. And so making sure that there's multiple people doing that. Then once the messaging doc is clear, you put it into the workflows, tell what content you need to make. And then and then it gets executed onto the website, into campaigns too. So I think just our content team working together with all of the other teams involved, it has just gotten more efficient, and we've seen clear productivity enhancement from getting content from creation spot to actually on the website is really clear, and the team is excited about it.
So it doesn't take 12 weeks anymore, huh?
It doesn't take, you don't have to start campaigns in October so you can launch in January. I think the other thing too is our BDR team is really from a personalization, and what we're working on is, in Colleen, to your point earlier, there are so many tools out there. And is it personalization? Is it data enrichment? Is it building the buying center? And so having the BDR team work with all the tools and creating workflows that those tools actually work together. So they're not spending time one-on-one as a marketing qualified account comes into the system, or a 6QA through 6 Sense comes in through the system. We're trying to implement the workflow that they can do it faster. And so, because personalization is really, really important. So the BDR team is seeing efficiencies as well. And it's just making them look better to our customers, that they really, and I think what's important to our customers, that you understand their business and you understand the challenges they're trying to solve, and personalization is key to that. And I would say one more example is kind of our AEO journey on our website. Is really, the web team has done a great job at kind of, making our content AI friendly. And so what questions are we supposed to ask that AI will respond to? And so I think where we're seeing traction, like I said, is the content team working together in the collaboration with all the teams, the BDR team, and then the web team.
Wow, that's impressive. Those are fabulous examples, but it's also helpful to talk about what perhaps hasn't worked. Where have you tried something and maybe it's just not right, or not right yet? I mean, I think with time it'll all be right, but has there anything you've tried that you said, no, this really didn't work?
I think as we were building our event, one of my peers on our creative team was talking about an example of using AI to develop some of the videos that we were working on. And I wouldn't say it didn't work. I would just say the human piece of this is so incredibly important. I was talking to him on a day where he was combing through the video, looking in every mirror reflection and every window to make sure there wasn't something weird showing up outside the window or out in the mirror reflection that would be distracting or inappropriate or a hallucination of some sort. So I think that I wouldn't say it didn't work. I just don't leave it alone yet.
Be diligent on the double checking.
Yeah. And check the things maybe that you don't think you need to check. The other piece of that is our team is finding, with the velocity of work that we're doing, I think that we're also finding there are bottlenecks where the humans need to be engaging. And so how are you protecting those humans? How are you reducing workload there? The comment earlier on, hopefully if your inputs are right, your messaging is more on point, those kinds of things. One of the things that we're talking to our internal legal teams about is their requirements, because we're sending more and more to our legal teams for review, and they are not staffed to review the volume of what we're sending them. And so I think that better understanding of how we protect the humans and don't just scale without considering cost there.
That is fair. I also think I know we've hit it we've built out some cool stuff, but then when I see how many tokens it takes, it's like, maybe
it is not actually free.
It's not free. Yeah, it's not free. Not free. All right. Let's shift to something counterintuitive. So one interesting thing that's come up, and I think we've talked about, as AI sort of floods all these digital channels, and you two are putting great work into your content, so it sounds like real content, but I think there's a lot of other stuff just out there. the value of human connection has really gone up, not gone down. Colleen, and you pointed out as AI generated content has increased, you're actually investing more in in-person live events. So tell us more about that.
Yeah, I actually spent the last 4 years in a field leadership role here at Qlik prior to moving into my current role. And in that field role, I really saw as AI was growing in scale, scope, effectiveness, efficiency, et cetera, the more people were receiving in their inbox or the more AI content that they were seeing in their feeds, I found that people were seeking out trusted one-on-one human connection and relationship. And that human connection and relationship was really happening in in-person events. And we saw that some at some of our third-party events, but where I really saw that the most was these organizations that are building community, where people are seeing each other on a recurring basis and where they are building trust among the group and sharing information around what they trust. And so Qlik and our teams in region and in those local spaces, we're looking for those opportunities to engage in that way, in that conversation. You know, breaking bread together over dinner, having a beer, having a conversation, learning something new together. Those shared experiences were really helping us engage on a more personal level in order to move our conversations forward in a way that was true and authentic without necessarily, but also it doesn't mean that we weren't investing in all of the AI stuff as well. I think it's this interesting almost inflection of the bell curve, right? We're seeing growth at both ends and more of a dip in the center of the hybrid engagement, if you will.
Interesting. Lisa, I know you had to make a case for the board of not cutting a lot of in-person events and conference things like that, because digital is getting just more credit with your attribution model. So how did you make that argument?
Yeah, so I think we've all seen the studies, and Kerry Cunningham, who we all love, is his studies have helped me with the board, is really reiterating that our customers and prospects spend 70% of the selling period doing their own research. But more importantly, and I think when we say integrated programs, it has to be integrated. So you can't take your foot off the gas for one and push on the other. So should we overspend in digital and not do face-to-face? And so they're all very important, because once that person or that team gets to 70%, they actually want to talk to somebody. And whether they want to talk to somebody individually or whether they want to talk to somebody at an event, and Colleen, to your point, that personal experience, I also think being, those smaller activities. So a roundtable event, when customers are talking to customers, our customers are our best sellers. And so the more we can get our customers in front of customers, the better it is. So yes, we have to make sure that we are digitally present where our prospects and customers are searching and doing their research. But we also have to make sure there is a play for that human interaction and that human touch, because whether consciously or unconsciously, when you have an experience, it creates a memory and it creates a reaction, a positive reaction, hopefully, to that brand or to that experience, which helps in the sales cycle. So it definitely can't be one or the other. It's how do we pull the levers in different ways, but not take our foot off one lever? Because one, from an attribution model, the beautiful thing is that we've taken exec teams and board members to the attribution model, that we're not having an MQL conversation anymore. Thank God. But sorry, but we are having that.
We bleeped that out. Whatever you said, we bleeped it out.
Exactly. We are having the attribution model, so we can actually see the performance of marketing, not necessarily just about sourced, but how marketing is touching. And so it takes all the levers to actually get that visibility.
That's great. I want to, two things, and I know we've got to wrap up in about 5 minutes or so. And Colleen, you brought this up, and I'd come across with BDRs where, personalization at scale used to be a luxury. A personalization was a luxury. Like you've done ABM one-to-one. I've done that with you. We've done it. And now with AI, you can almost do it at scale. I mean, I've seen that a lot of the BDRs, but you brought up a good point. Does AI suddenly make it easier to target smaller niche audiences that you couldn't do before at a level of personalization with content at scale? And if so, where do you think marketers should lean in? And you got me thinking more, Colleen, from a marketing side, not the BDR side.
Yeah, Kathy, it's interesting because yes, it absolutely allows that targeting of more niche opportunities and conversations. Where I go to is should you? And here's why I ask the should you. Because you can, I do need, people still buy from people. We still do have AEs and sellers who are working those relationships. And if I can personalize at scale and AI is driving content and going really deep on a niche opportunity and getting someone really excited, and my seller is not able to go that deep in the next conversation, then Qlik loses credibility in that moment. And so I want to be incredibly careful on the use cases that we're working with our sales teams on, that what marketing is putting out, sales can pick up, and making sure that we can continue that conversation. So that does mean working with sales enablement, but it also means understanding and scaling where I think those opportunities are going to come from and making some choices, because I do think we still need to make choices.
We do. And I think we do a whole other session on that, because we could talk for another hour on that. But we've got Q&A coming up. Before we end the discussion, though, I'd like one takeaway from each one of you. Tell a peer what they should do, not do in the next 90 days. And it could be a mindset shift. It could be a practical piece of advice. It could be just one thing you'd want to leave the audience with, a mistake to avoid. Lisa.
I think two things. I think committee is really important to help get the whole team involved. And I think freedom to explore, and not everything has to work, right? And so try pilots. And if they don't work, great, move on. If they do work, rinse and repeat.
Oh, that's great. Colleen.
I would probably say have a plan. I think that the experimentation is incredibly important. I think that having a plan to actually turn that experimentation into something broader is so important. So how do you start to step out of that? And that requires, place some bets. Lisa, to your point on find a couple things that work, great, make those bigger. How do you lean in? How do you expand? How do you grow from there? But my one piece of advice is have that plan to move from experimentation to something that gets operationalized.
Sounds good. I want to thank you both so much for sharing really so openly. I think it's fair to say you both have been successful, I think, different ways to go about it. So it's not a straight line. There's no neat playbook for this. But I think the pressure out there is real. I'm hearing it. So conversations like this, I think, help make the challenge more practical for people. So thank you. We do have a couple of questions. Before we turn to Q&A, if you look over on your right-hand side of the screen, this thing called Docs, we have our AI manifesto out there. It lays out sort of the bigger decisions and approaches you need to take as you think about going down AI. And I think they've captured a lot of probably what Lisa and Colleen have said. And so with that, got a couple questions. And one I think is interesting, because I really haven't touched on it. Which marketing roles or tasks have changed the most because of AI, and which ones maybe have not changed at all? I'm going to open it up to either one of you.
I think where I've seen the most change is probably fairly straightforward in content development. But I think the least change for us is that we are finding that message development and that curation of what we really want to deliver from a messaging standpoint, we have found more success keeping that with the people and the experts within our team rather than taking that to AI tools.
Interesting. Lisa, anything from you on that one?
Yeah, I would agree from a messaging perspective. In addition to content teams, I think BDR and SDR teams are really seeing benefit.
Yeah. So another one that's sort of in the same vein, and there's obviously marketers in the audience here. What capabilities does a modern marketer need to build now that were probably not as important a year ago?
I would just start with, I think the AI train is here. I think we all acknowledge that, and we have to get on board. So making sure, and we talked about this earlier, that there's room for development skills, and it depends on the group. The skill is different, but prompting to workflow creations to agent creations, but create room for training.
Kathy, you mentioned, I mentioned it earlier, and you said a lot, often not a skill set many marketers have, but I think really understanding our processes and understanding what happens when and in which order, I think that is a capability we're all going to have to build in order to then apply agents and an AI to the work that we are doing. If we want to improve our workflows, we actually have to define our workflows.
Yeah, I think that is an excellent point. You can't create a workflow or an agent if you don't know the process. And Kathy, you and I, even on the BDR team, trying to really nail down that process is hard.
And the process of, well, I go to this SharePoint side, and then I go look at their account record in Salesforce, and then I do that piece of it. That's not a process that you can efficiently give an agent. So how do you make that available?
PDRs, they all have a different one, or it's in someone's head. Yes, the flow charts I've done with Lisa have been, okay, let's try this again. Is this where this happens? So yes. There's a question actually that just came in, and I'm not sure if either one of you can answer. If not, I will follow up with the person who asked it. It says, any experience in marketing in a regulated industry where external messaging needs to meet specific guidelines? How has AI made this easier and more complex? In these environments, how have you applied governance to ensure compliance? Now, I know you both sell into regulated industries, so I'm curious.
We sell into regulated industries, but aren't necessarily, I used to work in mobile, and so I've worked in a regulated industry. I do understand that piece, but not under an AI guise. I would say my best experience here is just feeding things like legal guidelines, claims that we can make, words that we can't use, those kinds of things into our tooling for content development, but not specific to this question.
Okay. Lisa, any experience here? If not, I will get with Jeremy directly.
Yeah, I think we can get with Jeremy directly. I think we sell into finance, and we talk about compliance, but I think that goes to say what we were talking about earlier is that messaging development and the human side of that is really important still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think regulated industries are going to be much different than other industries just because of generally what he spells out here. I think it is a real challenge. I think they will have the lowest uptake of AI for those reasons until some of that stuff is solved. So with that, I think we're a minute over. So I just want to say thank you again, Colleen and Lisa. It's been a pleasure. And maybe we'll have to do a Netflix limited series here where we get together once a quarter and see where you are. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right. Thank you.